Thank you for the amazing welcome. Before I do anything else this evening, I'd like to pay tribute to the indigenous people on this land. I'd like to say that as we reflect on the legacy, the uplifting legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., let us also vow to never forget the genocidal force of settler colonialism. Freedom struggles that defines the presence of people of African descent in this hemisphere, let us also celebrate the determination of First Nations people to protect their land, their culture, and their future. With the Standing Rock Sioux, who have demonstrated courage and perseverance in defense of their land, their water, and their people. And so I thank the city of Seattle for inviting me to speak on the occasion of your third annual Martin Luther King Unity Day. I thank Mayor Ed Murray, Council President Bruce Harrell, as well as the members of the City Council and City Departments. During this visit to Seattle, I've been here for 2 days. This is my second day. I was over at Olympic College yesterday. Many people have asked me whether this is my first time in Seattle. Which of course gave me cause to reflect on the many, many times I have visited this city and the surrounding area. But it occurred to me that what I know best about the city are its educational institutions. My very first trip to Seattle in, I believe, 1969 was to participate in a rally at Garfield High. And the last time I was here, I spoke at Seattle University. Struck by the fact that this time it is not raining. And so I have escaped the storms of Northern California and am struck by the amazing beauty of the city. And the Puget Sound, which I crossed last night on a ferry, and the stunning snow-capped mountains I saw this morning from my hotel window. I know that aesthetics don't make up for poverty, but beauty does make a difference.
Yes, true.
And speaking of poverty, I'm especially happy to be here in Seattle because this city has set the minimum wage standard for the entire country. The fight for 15 is currently the most important struggle of the labor movement. So thank you, Seattle. And thank you, Kashama Salon, for insisting that we recognize the centrality of this issue. As we embark on a new era in our history, let us remember that so much of what is important so much of what has acquired significance, historical significance, has been achieved through mass struggle.
Yeah, say that.
When we campaigned during the 1970s and the 1980s to celebrate Dr. King's birthday, and there's a very long and interesting history of the way in which the holiday came into being. And you know, that involves a number of elected officials, activists, Shirley Chisholm. But what I'm going to say is that when this holiday was finally observed for the first time on January 20th, 1986, we could not have predicted how important this celebration would become, how much we would need it in the year 2017, how it would inspire us to struggle through the next 4 years. This is a powerful example of the way we live our histories and how their meanings are transformed based on the demands of the present. And I can tell you that over the last 3 decades, when we have officially observed a holiday on the occasion of Dr. King's birthday, I worried many times that it would simply become yet another occasion for the announcement of retail sales.
Right.
And of course, I think Macy's has a Martin Luther King Day sale, and
boycott.
Other stores have done just that. And in the past, there have been efforts to dramatize and sometimes replicate freedom rides and freedom struggles as if the only meaningful demonstrations were those of the past.
Come on.
But during the last 4 years, the legacy of Dr. King has become far more meaningful. Since we protested the killing of Trayvon Martin. The sense of the need for mass movements for prison abolition, which we'll talk about this evening, against racist police violence, for Black lives more broadly, for immigrant rights, against Islamophobia, for feminist movements, in defense of the rights of trans people, opposition to gender violence, opposition to industrialized food production that poisons humans and other animals and inflicts untold suffering on so many non-human animals. And by the way, Bruce, there's a deeper meaning of veganism. But we'll let that go. Opposition to oil pipelines, especially the Dakota Access Pipeline. Student struggles, especially for accessible education. As a matter of fact, free public justice for Palestine. Solidarity with the Dalit people in India. Solidarity with refugees from Syria and other parts of East Africa. And finally, since we learned about the election of Donald Trump, we have come to realize that the only way forward is unending struggle. And so, yes, we need to draw sustenance and encouragement from the history of struggles for social justice, for what was once proclaimed as the advent of a post-racial era has turned out to mark the beginning of a new militancy that recognizes the intersectionality of all of our struggles. So why is it important to seek inspiration from the legacy of Dr. King? First of all, because this legacy is not the legacy of an individual. Because it is a collective legacy. Through Dr. King, we pay tribute to vast numbers of people who stood in unity to proclaim that they would never surrender to the forces of racism and inequality. If we understand this legacy, we recognize that it is not only a recognition of those whose names have not necessarily been recorded by the historians. It is a recognition of those who have been rendered doubly or even triply invisible, of those whom official historians have not seen fit to recognize because they are poor, because they are black, because they are women. Thus, as we observe MLK Unity Day, we celebrate our own potential as agents in a collective quest for freedom at a time when the forces of capitalism, fueled as they always are by racism and heteropatriarchy, threaten to push us back. We say that there is no way to make America great again. Because if there is to be any greatness on America's agenda, it must be in the future. It must be in the future. And it will consist precisely in the overcoming of the capitalist forces that have impoverished not only so many people in this country, but people all over the world. And so maybe we should talk about the election. You know, Donald Trump was not supposed to be elected. As a matter of fact, I think he himself was shocked. Like all of us were.
Still are.
But first of all, if it were not for this obsolete institution called the Electoral College, he would not have been elected.
That's right.
The Electoral College functioned precisely in the way it was originally designed to function. To give slave states with small white populations the leverage they needed to acquire power at the national level. And this should cause us to reflect on the fact that we live with so many relics of slavery. Relics of slavery we do not question. The continued use of the death penalty is yet another relic of slavery. People around the world constantly ask how it is possible for the country that claims to have ushered democracy into the modern world to continually use the death penalty, this obsolete form of punishment on a routine basis. The only answer to that question is the way in which capital punishment became an instrument of slavery at a time when it should have been abolished. That is to say, around the time of the American Revolution, when all kinds of obsolete punishments were being disestablished. But the death penalty became an important instrument of punishment in the slave states, directed against slaves. So the only reason it continued to exist was because it became incorporated into slave law. And as a result, it therefore made its way into the larger legal sphere in the aftermath of the abolition of slavery. So it's important for us to recognize that history is not in the past. Who was it that said, I think it was Faulkner who said, history, the past is not dead. It's not even past. It lives with us in the present. And of course, we know that the U.S. as a nation was founded on settler colonialism and on slavery. And I think it's important for us to recognize the ways in which anti-indigenous and anti-black practices supported and sustained each other. We often assume that there is one discrete history here and another one over there, and they never interconnected with each other, but that is not the way reality works. History has a way of pulling us back toward the past. There's always the pull of the past. That is what conservatism is all about. That is precisely what conservatism is about. And in this country, it's a past of genocide against indigenous people, a past in which the southern United States relied on racism and anti-Semitism, the burning of churches and the burning of synagogues. The purpose of our struggles is to extricate ourselves from the pull of the past. And we see that we are positioned precisely opposite to the soon-to-be president who claims that he is going to lead the country in a backwards direction by the use of the phrase, "Make America Great Again." Democracy is an unfulfilled agenda. And what is really exciting about this moment, I mean, there are a lot of things we have to be a bit depressed about. But what's really exciting is that the United States of America is no longer a country that is absolutely controlled by white men. And progressive white men should applaud that. How can we claim democracy if Islam is equated with terrorism?
All right.
And I think I will be forever haunted by the photographic image of an armed policeman on the beach in France, in Nice, shortly after that terrible attack in Nice. And this policeman was compelling a woman who was wearing a burkini to remove her clothes, to take off her clothes, as if this woman and her desire to enjoy the beach bears responsibility for the deaths that had happened earlier. Yeah, we have a long way to go.
That's right.
And since I shared with you my response to that image of Islamophobia, let me say that there was a lot of talk about women during the election. You remember? There was a lot of talk about feminism too, right?
Yeah.
And then, in the aftermath of the election, there were those who argued that the majority of women actually voted against Donald Trump. As a matter of fact, if you look at the statisticians' numbers, they say that 42% of women voted for Donald Trump, and 54% voted for Clinton, which would mean that the majority of women voted for Trump.